The federal government is looking to invest about $10 billion, more than $10 billion, to help expand the port, grow our exports away from the United States by more than 50%, create over 17,000 jobs.
What if one assumption driving a global economic strategy was suddenly collapsing in real time? What if the idea that Canada has no alternatives wasn't just being challenged, but systematically dismantled? And here's the real question: what happens when a country decides it's done being economically cornered? Because that's exactly what's unfolding right now. Donald Trump's tariff strategy has always leaned on a simple, powerful belief. Push Canada hard enough, threaten key industries, and eventually, Canada will have no choice but to give in. It's a pressure game. A squeeze play. The expectation. Dependence leads to compliance. But what if that dependence disappears? MarkCarney is now moving to break that assumption at its core. And he's not doing it with speeches or symbolic gestures. He's doing it with something far more powerful: scale, infrastructure, and long-term strategy. Standing at the Port of Vancouver, the single most critical gateway for Canadian trade with the world, Carney is advancing a multi-billion-dollar expansion with one clear objective: reduce Canada's vulnerability to American economic pressure.
Amazing. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here at Canada's largest port. More than $1 billion of goods move through this port every single day. And in fact, when you look at the capacity of Port of Vancouver, it's bigger than the capacity of the next 5 biggest ports in Canada combined. But within the next decade, it's not going to be enough. And it's certainly not going to be enough if we're going to grow this economy, become stronger, more independent, more diversified, trade more with Asia and other parts of the world, which is what our intentions to do. So we're looking through the Major Projects office at expanding this port. But one of the things, if you expand the port, everything's connected. So expanding the port requires increasing the capacity and the efficiency of our rail system. It also means working to enhance some of our exports of energy and others. And we have tremendous opportunities in order to do that.
Let that sink in. This isn't just about trade. This is about leverage. This is about rewriting the rules of engagement. The plan is ambitious: grow non-US exports by more than 50%. That's not a marginal shift. That's a fundamental realignment of Canada's economic orientation. Tens of thousands of jobs are expected to be created. Entire industries could pivot. New markets will open. And most importantly, Canada gains options. So here's the question you should be asking. What happens when a country that was once dependent suddenly isn't? Because that's where things get interesting. Trump's tariffs operate like a blunt instrument: immediate pressure, short-term impact, high visibility. But Carney's response? It's the opposite. Long-term capacity. Structural change. Quiet but powerful. This is economic statecraft in action.
But in order to seize those opportunities, and let's just put it in perspective, the federal government is looking to invest about $10 billion, more than $10 billion, to help expand the port, grow our exports away from the United States by more than 50%, create over 17,000 jobs, 18,000 jobs in the construction of that, another 17,000 jobs full-time in the operation of that additional capacity, and that's not counting all the businesses and the knock-on effects. In fact, I was at a canola farm yesterday just north of Innisfail in Alberta, where they will get the benefit of this expanded capacity as we expand agricultural exports as well as products and others. Okay, so that's the opportunity, but everything is connected, and in order to seize the opportunity, we need to do several things at the same time, and that's our intention, and that's why we're working with the Musqueam Nation. We're working with Tsawwassen First Nation. We're working with the Squamish First Nation, the Tsleil-Waututh First Nation. This is unceded territory and traditional lands. There are treaty rights from the First Nations, and we need to work in a way that is building inclusively with Indigenous partners, sharing in the economic benefits, ensuring that the incredible natural resources we have, heritage, patrimony, is not just preserved but enhanced. So the federal government has been investing hundreds of millions of dollars to protect our whales, including the southern resident killer whales just off there. Hundreds of millions of dollars coming to with a part of the Pacific salmon strategy. $3.5 billion for our broader ocean protection strategy. But as important is working directly with First Nations who are managing these habitats, respecting their traditional rights, and creating economic opportunity for them. So that means housing. That means fully participating in the expansions here. It also means developing new ways of the partnerships between us. And I'd like to thank Chief Laura Cassidy of the Tsawwassen First Nation for being here. We can see her home. We can see Tsawwassen if you look over your shoulders just there. And I'd also like to thank Chief Wayne Sparrow of the Musqueam for being here. And of course, full respect to the other leaders of the other First Nations that we've been meeting with in discussions of how to move this forward together. It is a tremendous opportunity to build Canada strong, to build Canada sustainable, to make our country more independent, more resilient, and to do it in the right way, to do it inclusively, to do it in solidarity with those workers over there, creating good union jobs, tens of thousands of good union jobs, not just here but across the country.
Now look at the scale again. Expanding the largest port in the country so it can handle a dramatic increase in trade that bypasses the United States entirely. Increasing export capacity toward Asia and other global markets. Creating over 18,000 construction jobs and another 17,000 permanent roles. This isn't theory. This is physical transformation. And here's the deeper layer most people are missing: this strategy doesn't stop at the port. Because expanding the Port of Vancouver triggers a chain reaction. More rail infrastructure is needed. More energy exports must be facilitated. Agricultural supply chains expand. Logistics networks evolve. It's not just a project, it's a system-wide upgrade. And then there's another critical piece: partnerships. Carney has made it clear this cannot, and will not, be done in isolation. First Nations are central to this strategy. Their lands, their participation, their economic inclusion are part of the foundation. Housing, environmental protections, and union-backed jobs are all integrated into the plan. So now ask yourself, is this just trade policy, or is this nation building under pressure? Because that's exactly what it looks like. While Donald Trump is using tariffs as a weapon, MarkCarney is responding with infrastructure, partnerships, and long-term resilience. One approach forces compliance. The other builds independence. And here's the twist: one of these strategies compounds over time, the other doesn't. The expansion of the Port of Vancouver is more than construction. It's a declaration. A signal to global markets. A message to the United States. Canada is no longer willing to remain overly dependent on any single partner, especially one that has proven unpredictable. $10 billion. Tens of thousands of jobs. A direct path to Asia and beyond. This is what strategic diversification actually looks like. Not talk. Not promises. But capacity. And now the biggest question of all: will it work? Will Canada successfully pivot away from reliance on the US, or will global pressures reshape the outcome in ways we don't yet see? And what happens if other countries start following this exact blueprint? Because if they do, this isn't just a Canada story anymore. It becomes a global shift. If you've made it this far, you already see how big this moment is. So here's what I want to hear from you. Do you think Canada can truly reduce its dependence on the US? Or is this strategy too ambitious? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get the conversation going. And if you believe countries should control their own economic future instead of being pressured into decisions, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next.